Really quickly, I gotta give a shout out to my sponsor SeatGeek. If you guys are planning on going to any games or events this year, just use the app SeatGeek. I know I'm trying to go to a few NFL games this year, so I'm definitely using it. SeatGeek is an app that puts tickets from all over the web in a single place, making the whole buying experience simple. They rate these deals on a scale of 1 to 100, with the higher the number, the better the deal. And if you use my promo code KTO, you will get $20 off your first purchase. So I'm going to drop the link in the description. Honestly, you might as well just get the app just in case. You don't want to lose out on cheap tickets. So in my last video, I talked about Denard Robinson. I mentioned towards the end of the video that if he wanted to play in the pros, he had to transition from quarterback to running back. And it brings up an interesting concept. How is it even possible to play professional football at a position they never played in college? Well, the guys in this video make that happen, and do it at a spectacular level. There is more than just the guys in this video, but here is 5 of the most successful players who switched from quarterback after their college career. Number 1. This player was the pioneer of this idea. You could switch positions from quarterback and still be successful. In 1969, Marlin Briscoe was actually getting a bit of playing time under center for the Denver Broncos. His nickname was the Magician, and he became the first black player ever to play quarterback in the AFL. But going into his second season, he was going to be replaced as the starter. So he ended up leaving and signing with the Buffalo Bills. And because he felt he could make a greater impact elsewhere, he decided to change to wide receiver. Briscoe would become a Pro Bowl receiver for the Bills, and would eventually become a part of the only undefeated team in NFL history, the 72 Dolphins. Talk about an awesome career. Number 2. This story I'm about to tell is one that guys like Tim Tebow had the chance of, but didn't take it. Other than Briscoe, no one else on this list actually played quarterback in the NFL, except for Terrelle Pryor. After drawing comparisons to Vince Young in high school, he committed to Ohio State with some of the most insane measurables that you'll see. According to ESPN, he stood around 6'6", 227 pounds, ran a 40 in 4.4 seconds, and was arguably the best quarterback prospect in the nation. During his time at Ohio State, he lived up to a lot of the hype. He earned Freshman Player of the Year in the Big Ten, and by his sophomore season, he was already the fastest player on the team. He clocked a 40-yard dash that season in 4.33 seconds, and that season, he would go on to win the Rose Bowl over Oregon, taking home the game's MVP. Everything was going pretty great until this happened.
Ohio State quarterback Terrelle Pryor and 4 other Buckeyes must sit out the first 5 games of the 2011 season for accepting improper benefits.
Terrelle Pryor decided to leave college after his junior season, and he entered in the NFL supplemental draft. Many NFL scouts said that his quarterback skill set would not translate to the pros, yet the Raiders took a chance on him. He was the very last pick that the legendary Al Davis would ever make. When he got a chance at quarterback, it was sort of a mixed bag. There was some good. He has the longest run in NFL history for a quarterback, but his time at quarterback was mostly bad. He was eventually traded to Seattle for a 7th round pick, where he would eventually be cut in training camp. And after being released, he worked out with 4 teams, yet none of them showed enough interest to pick him up. Then after being signed and released by the Bengals in June of 2015, Pryor was ready to change. He announced the next day that he was open to switching to receiver. That same week, the Browns gave him a call, and even though he would end up making the 53-man roster, he was released early in the season. However, an injury to Josh McCown opened up a roster spot. The Browns called up Pryor, and he re-signed just in time to suit up for their final matchup. He only got in for a limited amount of plays, but he made 1 catch. This catch would be the foreshadowing of his next season.
Down the far sideline, going for the football and grabbing it. The catch
2016, Terrelle Pryor was probably the only bright spot on the entire Browns season. That game he had against the Dolphins where he literally did everything, even played in the secondary by the end. That was one of the greatest single game performances that I've ever watched. He would finish the year with over 1,000 yards, proving that you can successfully change positions in the NFL. Number 3. Around the turn of the century was the last time a player for the Indiana Hoosiers was up for the Heisman Trophy. That was quarterback Antoine Randall. He was the definition of a complete athlete. He was drafted by the MLB out of high school, he played college basketball for Bob Knight, and he pretty much did everything on offense for Indiana's football team. Joe Paterno once said about him, quote, "He is just the whole offense. It is scary to watch him. He is so quick that if you don't get him and you wait for him to pitch the ball, he will take off on you. He is just an amazing athlete. I don't know how you get ready for him." But due to his size, the odds of him playing quarterback in the NFL were slim to none. After becoming the first player in college football history to record 2,500 yards in 4 consecutive seasons, he opted to train as a wide receiver after his senior year for a shot to play in the NFL. Pretty much off his athletic ability alone, he would end up being drafted in the 2nd round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right off the bat, he became a versatile threat in the receiving and return game. If you look at his career stats, it shows a guy who was a consistent 2nd or 3rd option for just under a decade. And because his team was pretty awful in college, he never had a chance to make any big game throws. But he made up for it with one of the most spectacular plays in Super Bowl history.
Little toss. Here comes a gadget play. Randall he can throw. He was a quarterback in college. And he's thrown a touchdown to Hines Ward in the Super Bowl.
Off of the reverse, he comes around and it becomes a reverse pass, and he throws a perfect pass to Hines Ward.
Number 4. Entering 2001, Kent State was running an option offense with new freshman quarterback Josh Cribbs. Interestingly enough, he was teammates at the time with James Harrison. Yeah, the freak of nature from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And early in his career, he was already a major difference maker, becoming the first true freshman quarterback to ever rush and pass for 1,000 yards in the same season. And Kent State had their best record in 8 years. He would only go on to set more records. As a 4-year starter, he is the all-time leader in Kent State history in total offense, rushing touchdowns, pass completions and attempts, and a variety of others. His passing numbers improved throughout his career, and by the end of his senior year, he felt he had a legit shot at playing some quarterback in the NFL. And keep in mind, this is right at the time when Michael Vick was at his best, so the hype for the mobile quarterback was real. In the 2005 NFL Draft, the same draft that featured Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers, Josh Cribbs would go undrafted. After the draft, Josh remembered a Browns scout had told him there was no way he was playing quarterback in the pros, but Cleveland needed a guy to return kicks, and they would sign him if he was willing to be that guy. Well, he went for it, and every Browns fan ever, including me, is grateful for it. Over the span of the next 8 seasons, he would become one of the greatest returners in NFL history. He's tied for the most kickoff return touchdowns of all time. He is one of 10 players ever to return 2 kickoffs for touchdowns in the same game, and he was named to the NFL All-Decade team for the 2000s. For me, I say that Devin Hester is the greatest punt returner ever, and along with that, Josh Cribbs is the greatest kick returner of all time. It doesn't get much better than this play right here.
And Cribbs had it bounce off him. That's a live ball. Back by the goal line. He's got to come out with it. He's to the 5. He angled. He's up the sideline. He's still running. He's to the 20, 25, 30. He's to the 40. He's down the sideline and angles left. He's to the 35, 30, 25, 20. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown! Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Number 5. After Josh Cribbs was done at Kent State, one of his successors was Julian Edelman. After spending a year at a community college, which just so happens to be in Tom Brady's hometown, Julian Edelman transferred to Kent State to continue running the option attack that Josh Cribbs had done so well. After 2 pretty good seasons, Edelman put it all together his senior year, eclipsing over 3,000 total yards. That broke the single season record that Josh Cribbs had set in 2003. And like a lot of guys on this list, Edelman is short, at least when it comes to quarterbacks. Because to be an NFL quarterback and only be 5'10" is pretty much impossible. I know guys like Drew Brees and Doug Flutie aren't that tall, so it's definitely possible. But you have to be an extremely gifted passer. Edelman was definitely more talented running with the ball than he was throwing it. After not receiving an invite to the combine, he would end up doing his own private workout. He would put up some very impressive numbers, with his best event, the short shuttle. The Patriots would end up drafting him in the 7th round. NFL scouts were saying that Edelman was going to be used as a wildcat quarterback, since that seemed to be the trend back then. But then after that, he probably wouldn't be that useful. Well, turns out, the dude could play. He was such a hidden gem that they could get rid of Wes Welker and Edelman could step into his shoes with pretty much no problem. And also, during the 2014 and 2015 playoffs, he got his shot to throw the ball.
Edelman's going to throw. Deep downfield, wide open. Amendola, touchdown.
Edelman would go on to be a critical part of their Super Bowl victory, catching 9 passes for 109 yards, and catching the go-ahead touchdown late in the 4th. So do you guys remember when Tom Brady was suspended last year and Garoppolo got hurt, and then Brissett got kind of banged up a little bit, and they announced their next game that their backup quarterback was Julian Edelman? I think we all secretly wanted to see him play quarterback that game. That would have been such a sight to see. Unfortunately, we didn't, and we will probably never know. But here's one thing we do know. After Patriots fans were stunned by David Tyree's miracle helmet catch in 2007, nearly a decade later, Julian Edelman, the former college quarterback, made his own miracle.
Julian diving for it. As Wolford got in front of the receiver